Came forward recently, Julie Swetnick was not on the original list of FBI interviews, and she has not spoken in public since releasing a written statement until now. NBC News' Kate Snow is reporting this story and just interviewed Ms. Swetnick, an interview that will air now for the first time. Kate?
Ari, thanks. What we want to do here is lay out all that she said, her story, our reporting. We want to be very transparent because these are very serious allegations. Kavanaugh has called Julie Swetnick's story nonsense and a farce. The president today questioned her credibility, and NBC News, for the record, has not been able to independently verify her claims. There are things that she told us on camera that differ from her written statement last week. We've been trying independently to reach out to anyone who remembers attending parties with Julie Swetnick and Brett Kavanaugh, and we've been asking her attorney for names. So far, we've not found anyone who remembers that. She's also unclear about when she first decided to come forward. Why are you sitting here today?
Well, I'm quite a shy person and quite a private person. And I wouldn't be here today except for about 6 weeks ago. I happened to learn about Brett Kavanaugh becoming one of the people who was shortlisted to go to the Supreme Court.
This is in July? Summer?
I don't remember exactly, but it was about 6 weeks ago. And then I became aware of Dr. Ford and her description of what had happened to her at a party one time that also had Brett Kavanaugh involved. And I started to think back to my days when I was in the early 80s in Montgomery County in Maryland, and I thought that I might have some information that might corroborate some of the things that she had stated.
So you only thought about coming forward when you learned about Dr. Ford?
Yes, because I did not know how close Brett Kavanaugh was to possibly becoming the next Supreme Court justice.
I just want to get the timeline right about this because he was nominated in July. Christine Ford, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford came forward in the Washington Post more recently in September. So was it in September that you
It's been several weeks, but I'm not somebody who follows the news. I'm not political at all.
Julie Swetnick says she was in community college when she started attending house parties that included high schoolers.
You graduated in 1980
Correct.
From high school.
Correct.
From Gaithersburg Public High School. So you would have been out of high school. So a lot of people have wondered, what are you doing at a high school party if you're already
It wasn't a high school party. These parties had everybody between about an age range of 15, 16 to 25, maybe even more.
How did you meet Brett Kavanaugh? Did you actually meet him?
I did actually meet him. I remember meeting him because I remember he's got a very distinctive face, and as does Mark Judge. And I remember specifically meeting him, being introduced to him.
Did you know anything about Brett Kavanaugh?
No. I believe he might have been wearing a Georgetown Prep uniform, which a lot of the boys used to wear at least a uniform or parts of their uniform.
At the party?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I think they were very proud.
In your statement to the Judiciary Committee, you described a range of behavior. And you say you saw Brett Kavanaugh do these things. Can you describe to me what you saw him do?
He was very aggressive, very sloppy drunk, very mean drunk. I saw him go up to girls and paw on them, try to, get a little too handsy, touching them in private parts. I saw him try to shift clothing.
Later in the interview, she went further.
I saw him push girls against walls. He would pretend to stumble and stumble into them and knock them into a wall. He'd push his body against theirs. He would grope them.
There are some differences between Swetnick's sworn statement last week and what she told us. In that statement, Swetnick said she became aware of efforts by Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge to spike punch at parties. In our interview, she said she saw them near the punch, but did not specifically say she saw either man spike it.
Did you see Brett Kavanaugh, spiking the punch, putting grain alcohol in the punch?
I saw him giving red Solo cups to quite a few girls during that time frame, and there was grain punch at those parties. And I would not take one of those glasses from Brett Kavanaugh, excuse me. I saw him around the punch I won't say bowls or the punch containers. I don't know what he did, but I saw him buy them, yes.
In her declaration, Swetnick also wrote, "I also witnessed efforts by Mark Judge, Brett Kavanaugh, and others to cause girls to become inebriated and disoriented so they could then be gang raped in a side room or bedroom by a train of numerous boys. I have a firm recollection of seeing boys lined up outside rooms at many of these parties, waiting for their turn with a girl inside the room. These boys included Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh."
What did you see?
It was very innocent. Well, until what happened to me, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. But I would see boys standing outside of rooms, congregated together, sort of like a gauntlet. And I didn't know what was occurring. But I would see them laughing, a lot of laughing.
Standing in line outside a room?
They would, not line, but definitely huddled by doors. And I didn't understand what it could possibly be.
And in your declaration, you describe Brett Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge standing outside,
yes,
seeing them stand outside a door.
Yes, with other boys.
So you're suggesting that, in hindsight,
yes,
you think he was involved in this behavior?
I would say yes. It's just too coincidental.
She says she had no idea exactly what that behavior was until she herself was attacked.
Can you tell me what happened? As much as you're comfortable telling us?
Yeah. What happened to me is probably the most horrendous, awful thing that could happen to any human being. My body was violated. My soul was broken. I was not able to have somebody stop when I said, no, stop. I felt like somebody took me and basically said, you're worthless. You are nothing to us. You are disposable. I was at a party, and I remember that I started not to feel very well. And next thing I know, I was shoved into a room, and I'm having my clothes torn in different directions. I was touched everywhere. I was physically assaulted in every way you could possibly physically assault a woman. It was horrible. I had no way to fend them off.
You know what I'm going to ask. Everyone is wondering if one of those people was Brett Kavanaugh.
I cannot specifically say that he was one of the ones who assaulted me, but before this happened to me, at that party, I saw Brett Kavanaugh there, I saw Mark Judge there, and they were hanging about the area where I started to feel disoriented, and where the room was, and where the other boys were hanging out and laughing. I could hear them laughing and laughing. And it's very hard for me to talk about this, but it's important that somebody says something, because if Brett Kavanaugh was one of those people that did this to me, there is no way in the world that he should go scot-free on this and that he should be on the Supreme Court. He just, it's just unthinkable to me. If he does, there's no justice in the world.
After what you describe as this attack on you and a rape, did you tell anyone?
Oh, yes. I contacted the Montgomery County Police.
You did?
And I told my mother, and she cried with me. She held me the next day. I was so distraught. She wanted me to go to the police immediately. She was just outraged. She was so hurt for me.
Do you remember who you spoke to?
I vaguely remember people, but I'm not quite sure, not 100%.
Swetnick's mother has since passed away. Swetnick also named one of the officers she said she spoke with. That officer is now deceased. NBC News verified he worked for the Montgomery County Police at that time. We have requested copies of any records, but Montgomery County Police officials said today it could take up to a month for them to respond.
It's not true. It's not true.
Judge Kavanaugh has said he doesn't know who Swetnick is, and her allegations are from the Twilight Zone.
I want to play you a little bit of what he said on Thursday.
The Swetnick thing is a joke. That is a farce.
Never met her. Don't know who she is. There's a letter released within 2 hours of that breaking yesterday from, I think, 60 people who knew me in high school, men and women, who said it was, their words, nonsense. Totally, the whole thing, that's totally ridiculous.
None of these allegations are true.
Correct.
No doubt in your mind.
Zero. I'm 100% certain.
Not even a scintilla.
Not a scintilla. 100% certain, Senator.
You swear to God.
I swear to God.
You know what I say to that? He's a liar.
Mark Judge put out a statement. He said under oath that your allegations are bizarre and that he would remember actions so outlandish even when suffering from an addiction. He's talked about how he has an addiction to alcohol. He categorically said he denies your allegations. He says he doesn't know you. What do you say to that?
What I say about that is he's an admitted blackout drunk and drug addict. What does he know? How could you know what you've forgotten if you blacked out?
On Sunday, Senate Republicans questioned Swetnick's credibility and cited a lawsuit that was filed against her in 2000 by a former employer.
The company said you lied about graduating from Johns Hopkins University and about your work experience.
That's total caca. That never, I mean, I remember when this happened and it was just ridiculous, and that's why they dismissed it, and it didn't ever go anywhere.
You didn't lie?
No.
About
didn't go anywhere. Nope.
Education or your work
Nope.
experience?
It was just total fabricated.
What was it about? What the lawsuit says, the lawsuit by your former employer said that you engaged in, quote, unwelcome sexual innuendo and inappropriate conduct after 3 weeks on the job toward other employees.
Never happened. That's why it didn't go anywhere, and that's why it was dismissed.
Senate Republicans and other critics have also noted a restraining order filed against Swetnick by an ex-boyfriend in 2001.
He filed a restraining order against you, which we did find some evidence of. It was effective for, I think, 12 days.
That is absolutely preposterous, and honestly, I never received a restraining order.
Court records show the petition for the restraining order was dismissed 12 days after it was filed. Swetnick is represented by Michael Avenatti, who also represents Stormy Daniels and is an outspoken critic of the president. She says she reached out to him after a friend who went to law school with Avenatti recommended him.
My best friend went to George Washington Law School with him, and Michael knows Washington. I wanted an attorney who knew Washington and who was recommended.
But as you know, some people, actually probably a lot of Americans, have expressed doubt about your story simply because of how it came out and who represents you.
I cannot speak for other people and why they would form certain opinions. I just know that I wanted to have good representation, and I think I found it.
I asked Swetnick if any of her friends from the 80s remember going to these parties with her.
Are there friends who remember these parties too and remember you?
Oh, I think
going?
everybody in the county remembers those parties.
Because we haven't heard from those friends, so I'm asking, you know, are there people alive today who would say, yes, I went to those parties with
Yes,
Julie?
there are people that know about those parties.
This morning, Swetnick provided 4 names of friends she says went to the parties with her. One of them said he does not recall a Julie Swetnick. Another of the friends she named is deceased. We've reached out to the other 2 and haven't heard back. Swetnick says after the alleged attack on her when she was 19, she never returned to those big house parties.
You said it was the last party you remember going to
That was
like
the last party I consciously remember going to. It was definitely the last party I ever went to in Montgomery County. The next year, I remember being at Beach Week in Ocean City during Beach Week. I wasn't there for Beach Week. I just happened to be there vacationing. And I bumped into some friends, and somehow we ended up going to a get-together in Ocean City. And at that party, I did see Brett Kavanaugh there again. And it crushed me. I fell apart, and I had to get out of there.
Swetnick told me that if she had known what was happening to her had possibly happened to other women or men, she would have absolutely tried to break into that room, this is a quote, and save whoever the person was at those parties. She would have contacted authorities as well, she said. Again, Judge Kavanaugh has said that he does not know Julie Swetnick and has called her claims, Ari, nonsense. Apologies for my voice.
Well, you've been working hard, Kate Snow. It's a big story that touches a lot of things. I want to ask you some questions about it. What we're going to do is fit in a very short break, 30 seconds, and when I'm back, I'll be back with Kate Snow. Welcome back to The Beat. I am here with NBC News' Kate Snow. We just aired her exclusive interview with a Kavanaugh accuser who is speaking out for the first time, Julie Swetnick. Thank you for your reporting. There's a lot for people to see there.
There's a lot in there, yeah.
And there are things that go in different directions, as often happens when you report out a story like this.
Right.
You pressed her on the timeline of when she decided to come forward.
Right. Well, you saw that at the top of the piece. And frankly, we found it a little bit confusing because first she said that in July, she said that she had heard about Brett Kavanaugh being on a short list. And that happened in July. You heard me ask her that. Wasn't that in July? And she said yes. And I think she said that was 6 weeks ago, but actually July is about 3 months ago. And then she mentioned Dr. Ford and being inspired by her and wanting to support her and corroborate some of what she was hearing Dr. Ford say, but just for the record, that was in September. So there's a little haziness around why she decided and when she decided to come forward.
How does your reporting effort to account for her secondhand sources or validators compare to other stories like this that you've covered?
Well, that's a good question. Here's what I can tell you. We found out about, I'm going to be fully, disclose everything here. We found out about this. I found out about this interview on Friday night. On Saturday morning, I had my first conversation with her attorney, Michael Avenatti. I asked him at that point, can you provide us with any names of people who went to the parties with her, just because we couldn't place her. NBC News has not, since last week, been able to place her in that time period at those house parties, in that group of friends. There aren't other people coming forward, as happens in many other stories we cover, who say, yes, I was there too. And we're not, discounting what she said in any way. We're just trying to do our reporting and make sure that there were people who said she was there. And to date, as of today, we haven't been able to find anyone who says, yes, I saw her in the same room with Brett Kavanaugh. And of course, Judge Kavanaugh says he was not in the same room with her. He doesn't even know who she is.
And while some of her allegations overlap with things we've heard from other multiple sources that has been part of the vetting of Judge Kavanaugh, it seems that both in her sworn statement and now in this interview, she is not alleging individual misconduct by Brett Kavanaugh attacking her.
Well, she's not sure about that. Yes, that's right. She's not sure whether she said she thought she saw him in the vicinity, and then her description is that she got pushed into a room and was sort of out of it, and there were a number of men in that room. I won't get into details, but she says she's not sure who was there.
Right.
I think we should just also say that we've been trying to verify everything she's said. As much as we possibly can. The resources of NBC News are way beyond me, Ari, as you know. There are a lot of people in this newsroom working on this. And again, we're interested in talking to anyone else who may have seen what she says she saw. I should also note that she did describe not direct behavior against her, but you heard her in the interview describe behavior against other women. She says she observed. She says she observed Judge Kavanaugh behaving inappropriately, pushing women against walls, talking to them in a demeaning way. So she's making some very serious allegations here. And I think it's up to the viewers to decide what they make of this.
Right, about what she says she saw. And within this process, as more information and more accounts come out, those will be weighed through the process. NBC News' Kate Snow, thank you for sharing your reporting with us.